These are 3 encounters that happened in the quiet hours of the night, when the world is still, and something unseen might be watching. Story 1. The Empty Passenger, Indonesia. It was nearly 2 in the morning when Dimas finished dropping off his last passenger. He drove a small taxi in a quiet part of West Java. By that hour, the streets were usually empty. Street lights flickered over narrow roads surrounded by thick trees. Dimas was about to head home when he noticed someone standing at the side of the road. A woman. She was wearing a long white dress. Her hair hung down over her face. At first, Dimas hesitated, but she raised her hand slowly, as if asking for a ride. He stopped the taxi. Without saying a word, the woman opened the back door and sat inside. Her voice was quiet. She told him to drive toward an old road near the outskirts of town. As Dimas drove, the night seemed unusually silent. Even the insects had stopped making noise. After a few minutes, he checked the rear view mirror. The woman was sitting perfectly still, her head slightly tilted downward. He tried to make conversation, but she didn't respond. Then something strange happened. Every time Dimas looked into the mirror, her reflection seemed slightly different. Sometimes her head was lower, sometimes it was raised slightly, but he never saw her move. Finally, they reached the road she had mentioned. It was a dark, abandoned stretch surrounded by forest. Dimas turned around to ask where she wanted to stop, but the back seat was empty. The door had never opened. Confused, he checked the seat. It was dry. But on the floor of the car, he saw something that made his heart drop. A trail of muddy footprints leading from the back seat to right behind the driver's seat. And that night, Dimas learned something locals already knew. That road was once the site of an accident where a woman in white was killed decades ago. Some say she still tries to find a ride home. Story 2. The Apartment Hallway, South Korea. In Seoul, tall apartment buildings stretch high into the night sky. Thousands of people live stacked above one another, but sometimes the higher floors become strangely quiet. Minji had just moved into a small apartment on the 14th floor. It was cheap, much cheaper than other apartments nearby. But she assumed the price was because the building was older. On her first night there, she returned home around midnight. The elevator opened to a long, dim hallway. Only a few lights were working. As she walked toward her door, she noticed something odd. At the far end of the hallway, a woman was standing completely still. She was facing the wall. Minji thought it was strange, but she didn't say anything. She unlocked her door and went inside. A few minutes later, she realized she had left something in her car. So she stepped back into the hallway. The woman was still there, standing in the same spot, facing the wall. This time, Minji felt uneasy. As she walked toward the elevator, she glanced back. The woman's head slowly turned, but her body did not move. Her face looked pale. Her eyes were wide open. Minji hurried into the elevator and left the building. The next morning, she asked the security guard if anyone else lived on that floor. The guard looked confused. Then he said something that made Minji move out a week later. That hallway had been empty for months because the woman who used to live there had died in her apartment. And sometimes, residents claim they still see her in the hallway, facing the wall. Story 3. The Floating Light, Bangladesh. In rural Bangladesh, farmers often work late into the night, especially during harvest season. Rahim was walking home from his fields one night after finishing his work. It was around 3 in the morning. The sky was dark and the dirt road was barely visible. As he walked past a small swamp near the rice fields, he noticed a faint blue light floating in the distance. At first, he thought it might be someone carrying a lantern, but the light moved strangely. It drifted slowly through the air, sometimes rising, sometimes dipping close to the ground. Curious, Rahim walked a little closer. The light suddenly stopped moving. Then it began floating toward him. Rahim froze. As the light got closer, he realized it wasn't a lantern. There was no person holding it. It was simply hovering, pulsing softly in the dark. He remembered stories his grandmother used to tell about wandering spirits that appear as lights in the night, spirits that lure travelers deeper into the fields. Rahim slowly stepped backward, but the light continued drifting toward him, closer and closer, until it was only a few meters away. Then suddenly, it disappeared. The darkness returned. Rahim ran the rest of the way home. The next morning, he told the village elders what he saw. None of them seemed surprised, because for generations, farmers had reported the same floating lights near those fields, and some people who followed them were never seen again. Across Asia, stories like these are passed down through generations. Some are dismissed as superstition, others remain unexplained. But in quiet villages, dark forests, and empty hallways, there are still places people avoid after midnight. Because sometimes, the things waiting in the darkness or tirth are still there.